Komodo Hozi. My name is Paul Bennett, one of your vice principals at Sir John Franklin High School. As we have students and staff from both Treaties 8 and 11 in the NWT, especially number 8 in our territory here in Yellowknife, our school and I recognize the traditional territory of Acacho territory of the Yellowknife's Dene and their well-rooted relationships with the land of present-day Yellowknife. I acknowledge my presence on this shared unceded territory of the Yellowknife's Dene First Nation, the traditional land of Chief Dragies. I recognize and continue to learn about the long history of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, peoples of Canada who traveled through this region for countless centuries. I dedicate myself to serving and giving back to the people of this territory. This year, as well as in the past 2 years, we have included November 8th's National Aboriginal Veterans Day, along with the traditional November 11th Canadian Remembrance Days in one ceremony. In Canada, we are all members of a treaty, but I believe, as Canadians, we have not fully realized nor acknowledged that when we were called upon to defend freedoms and uphold our beliefs as a nation, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit soldiers volunteered to wear the Canadian flag on their shoulder. Despite the challenges they faced, Indigenous soldiers served with distinction, winning medals for bravery in action. It is estimated that 12,000 Indigenous men and women served in World War I and II and the Korean War as nurses, soldiers, scouts, and snipers. Indigenous women and men have continued to proudly serve during the post-war years as well, deploying on NATO missions and serving with the United Nations. I paraphrase a former Prime Minister of Canada, Lester B. Pearson, when I say, whether we live together in confidence and cohesion, with more faith and pride in ourselves and less self-doubt and hesitation, strong in the conviction that the destiny of Canada is to include, not to divide, sharing and cooperation, not in separation or in conflict with each other, but respecting and reconciling the past and welcoming our future, united to build a better world for all of us. Join me in this year's online assembly as we collectively respect this past. Take a moment to remember those who fought and died, and those who returned with physical and emotional scars. On this day, over 100 years ago, as the guns of the Great War fell silent, we vowed to never forget those who paid the ultimate price for peace. For many of us in this school, both students and staff, we reach back and remember a personal connection to many of our close relatives, the poppy, the moment of silence, the National War Memorial, and the National Aboriginal Veterans Monument are symbols that remind us of the chaos of war, but more importantly, allow us to show our thanks to the servicemen and women and their families, lest we forget. Please stand for the playing of O Canada by grade 10 student Sean Vermack, and remain standing for the last post, followed by 2 minutes of silence to think of those sacrifices made by our relatives and friends, and to conclude that moment of silence by Sean playing La Rousse. Please be seated. Thank you, Cadet Vermack. I now have the honor of introducing two special guest speakers at today's online assembly. The first speaker is a friend I have known for almost 17 years, Master Warrant Officer, retired Floyd Powder. He is the father of two students who have gone to this school. Floyd is Métis, who has proudly served in our Canadian Armed Forces for many years. He is also an advocate of Métis rights, who will say a few words about National Veterans Day. What he will say will no doubt remind all high school students who are presently enrolled or have taken our Northern Studies course of the struggle and road to reconciliation Canada is presently engaged on. I present to you Master Warrant Officer, retired Floyd Powder.
Bonjour, good day. I am Warrant Officer, retired Floyd Powder, a 32-year veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces. Student council, staff, and most importantly, students of École Sir John Franklin High School. During Remembrance Week, there are a number of activities that take place across the country to remember the sacrifices of Canadians during the two World Wars, Korea, peacekeeping operations, and Afghanistan. November 8th is recognized as National Aboriginal Veterans Day. This is a day of remembrance and a reminder of the contributions of Aboriginal veterans during the First, Second World Wars and Korea. National Aboriginal Veterans Day began in Winnipeg in 1994, when Aboriginal veterans were not recognized in Remembrance Day ceremonies. Aboriginal Veterans Day is now being celebrated in many communities across the country. Over 12,000 Aboriginal people are estimated to have volunteered in all three wars, including 7,000 First Nation members, of which approximately 300 died. These numbers do not include non-status First Nations and Métis members or Inuit members. First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people were not eligible for conscription because they were not considered Canadian citizens unless they surrendered their Aboriginal status through enfranchisement. Despite numerous challenges, many Aboriginal people volunteered for service, often traveling long distances for remote communities to enlist and learning a new language, English, and coping with racism. Aboriginal people were not allowed to enroll in the Royal Canadian Air Force until 1942 and the Royal Canadian Navy until 1943. Both Aboriginal men and women enlisted, serving as soldiers, nurses, and in many other roles. Many served with distinction, winning medals for bravery in action. After the wars, having served as equals on the battlefield, many Aboriginal veterans returned home and were not entitled to receive the same benefits as other veterans. In some cases, denial of benefits, loss of Indian status, not being able to vote, and expropriation of their land by the government. It was only in 1995 that Aboriginal veterans were permitted to lay wreaths for their fallen comrades at the National War Memorial in Ottawa. It took until 2003 for the Government of Canada to provide veteran benefits to First Nation soldiers who had been denied them in the past. Métis veterans did not receive benefits as they were not recognized under the Indian Act. On September 10th, 2019, the Minister of Veterans Affairs and Associate Minister of National Defence issued a statement and apology to fully recognize Métis veterans' sacrifices and took a historic step towards reconciliation. This year, please take the time and join veterans, members of the Royal Canadian Legion, Canadian Armed Forces, and Royal Canadian Mounted Police at various Remembrance Day ceremonies. Also, please visit Lakeview Cemetery and pay your respects for the veterans that are buried here within the Field of Honor. Marcy, Krianamik, merci, thank you, least we forget.
Thank you, Master Warrant Officer Powder. Grade 10 student Emmett Lindsay, whose late father, a 30-year Army veteran, Sergeant Lindsay, will now recite the Ode to Remembrance.
They out the songs to battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunched against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall not grow old, as we left grow old. Age shall not worry them, nor the years condemn. At going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
Thank you, Emmett. I now present Lieutenant Navy Sarah General.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lieutenant Navy General. I am from Six Nations of the Grand River and identify with the Cayuga Nation. I am currently 28 years old. So in 2011, I joined the Raven program. The Raven program to me was a way to experience life outside of the reserve, outside of my comfort zone, and I thought I'd give it a try. It was a big step. It was my first time moving away from home, first time being by myself at 17, 18. I very much enjoyed my time there. I met over 60 Indigenous people throughout our country, and I am much grateful for their insight into their cultures. I'd like to say that Raven was probably one of my favorite courses I've done so far throughout my military career, and it was just a great experience overall. From there, I contacted a few people actually from the Raven program, and we decided that we wanted to continue, and we joined and applied for the Aboriginal Leadership Opportunity Year program. The Alloy program I joined in 2012. It is a year-long program held at the Royal Military College of Canada. It provides you with university courses. Consider it kind of like a gap year. And that's what I took it as, and my experience there led me to join the regular officer training plan at the Royal Military College of Canada, to which I graduated in 2017. From my understanding, I am the only female serving member to have done all three of those programs, and that means a lot to me. Now here in Yellowknife, I am the administration officer at JTFN, Joint Task Force North. I take care of, I have oversight of everybody's pay to make sure everybody's allowances and everything are good to go. Nyawa for listening, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Lieutenant General. Members of our choir, under the direction of Susan Chantora, will now perform In Flanders Fields.
Let my
Thank you, choir and Ms. Shantora. Thank you for your respectful attention. Thank you, Remembrance Committee members, Nikita Morozov, Susan Shantora, Bridget McLeod, Tamiko Robson, Brianna Tremblay, Ian Brown, Wendy Malkin, and Kate Powless for today's order of assembly and preparations. For those staying online after the ceremony, Ms. Robson will be explaining what an act of remembrance can look like with the paper crane activity. Your class has been provided a set of foldable papers that can be folded origami style into cranes and will be displayed in our main foyer. A short video link will explain the simple folding technique. Thank you.